obviously at this point we need an expert. We got to go to the experts. We got to see who, and by expert, I mean an expert in wearing the same fucking shirt every day and never moving this stack of work. Fucking hell, that piece of paper is the same one. It's just been sitting there. What do you do? Don Jr., what the fuck do you do with your time besides shoot these videos for? I mean, his whole fucking job is Rumble videos. Guys, okay, guys, okay, guys, okay, guys. So, what do you think? How fast before guys? Is it the first word or the third word? Is it the second word? Okay, guys, or just guys? I think it's okay. I think he goes with okay, guys first. Let's see. Oh, and they got to do it.
Guys, you're not going to believe this one.
Oh, it's the first word. Guys, you're not going to believe this one, but I'm reading it right off of my little list that the Heritage Foundation gave me. Guys, tell us.
I want to take a guess at how long it will go from Joe Biden's, remember, America is back. America's back. To ISIS is back under this president and our woke generals. Because I think the answer is really, really quickly. Because
really quickly. I mean, just the grasp, the vocabulary, the turn of phrase, the wit. I don't know who can also deal on such a level with a man of this. All right.
Just today, apparently the Taliban, according to the Washington Post, has rejected extending the August 31st U.S. pullout deadline, calling...
Really? How'd they feel about the May 1st deadline?
A red line. Like, is that like an...
Jesus Christ.
A red line that doesn't really mean anything, or is it like a Taliban red line that means something? Remember the Obama red line? He drew the red line. You're not to... They walked across. They slapped him on a world stage, essentially.
Did they? Essentially?
And he did nothing.
It's weird, because your dad just let them stay on that side of the red line. He didn't, like, come in and go, yeah, that was a red line. I'm sticking to it. Now they just fucking... He was like, nah, come on in, guys. Rutchins, you want our base? Knock yourself out.
So he drew another red line, and they did it again. And the world watched... And they laughed at how pathetic America had become.
It's weird that the American, like, for example, let me give you an example if I may. Let's say you set a date for withdrawal and you don't honor it. And then you set another date for withdrawal and you don't honor it. And then you set another date and then on for 10 years. And then your ballless scrotum of a father sets a date outside his presidency that he never thinks he'll have to live up to. And, even then sets no plan in motion to make it actually possible. At what point does Biden setting a red line like, yeah, we're getting the fuck out? That's a red line for us too.
Kind of weak leadership. So
kind of.
Unlike Obama's red line.
Why do you have to read to see that? What the fuck are you staring at? Unlike Obama's red line,
I think the Taliban actually have resolve. They actually mean it. The Taliban have outsmarted Joe Biden and Team America Last.
Team America Last? Oh, yeah, you're right. Put it in quotes because it's bullshit.
From moment number one in this whole thing.
From moment number one. I think moment number one was actually when your dad and Pompeo sprung Baradar from a Pakistani prison. I mean, it obviously goes back way farther than that. But in terms of the pullout.
Got 88
Speaking of pullout, your dad couldn't have... I mean, honestly, it would have saved us all so much trouble.
$1 worth of U.S. military-grade equipment from it. Didn't even have to fire any shots. Now, they're firing shots now, but it's at, like, civilians in the street. You know, they probably start beheadings pretty quickly if they haven't already. We know they probably have. I just don't have the exact details, so I don't want to get fact-checked and thrown off.
Well, you're just making shit up, you know. But good way, like, this is, by the way, a technique. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, where people like Glenn Beck did this a couple of times in his video. This is something Don Jr. does all the time. Dinesh D'Souza does it constantly, which is make something up that's a terrible thing, that isn't happening. Insist that it is happening, and then complain that anyone will fact check you if you continue to insist that the thing that isn't happening is happening because it's probably happening and they're just lying. It's this circular way of like sort of manufacturing a version of reality to support your narrative when there is none.
Social, but the Taliban have all the leverage.
Look at him reading this bullshit. Look at him. Dude, the video's 4 minutes and 28 seconds. Make sure you pinch your fingers on the words that you need to say.
It, and so does the rest of the world. And they are going to use this to extract even more from the U.S. Even more than...
Yeah, even more than $300 million a fucking day for 20 years.
88 billion they already got. Even more than essentially the end of a 20-year forever war that they basically came back in and took it back over.
Is that supposed to be a sentence? The end of the 20-year forever war, which is ending because Biden's ending it and your dad didn't have the nuts to do it. And yet stay for... All right.
They're going to use this and play the Biden administration and continue to show exactly how pathetic this administration and its woke nonsense generals really are. Again
What?
This is not an Obama red line, in my opinion. This is a real red line. Any other president would tell him to pound sand, but Crazy Joe, when he's not in the basement, he's making bad decisions. He's out there probably saying, we got to give them whatever they want. It's the Taliban. They're in control.
Is that what they're saying? Is that... honestly, what do you have to draw from as far as a reality other than what your dad did, which is, obviously, if your dad did that, that's what everybody else is going to do because your dad is the exemplary ubermensch in the world.
And he's probably right, because Joe allowed them to create the largest hostage situation in American.
Your dad made the deal last year.
Right? Jen Psaki says there are no Americans left stranded, even though her national security advisor, Jake Sullivan, said there are thousands or maybe tens of thousands of Americans still stuck in Afghanistan.
Yeah, we're getting them out. That's the whole point. If there weren't, we would be gone already. We are removing those people. The only people who are going to get quote unquote stuck there are the people who don't want to leave.
They're playing word games, hoping for the media to do their thing and defend them at all costs. But through
defend them at all costs? Yeah, that. Everybody is on board with staying in Afghanistan in the news right now, except for Lawrence O'Donnell.
Competence, he handed...
Look at him reading again. Dude, it's 4 minutes. You can't fucking ramble about this for 4 minutes?
...of American lives over to terrorists, right? Trump was impeached over a phone call. Joe Biden, just fine. Largest hostage situation in America, just fine. 88 billion of American military equipment in the hands of a terrorist regime, just fine. Remember, guys, they're going to honor women's rights other than the ones that are beating in the streets.
That are beating in the streets?
It was not an unexpected development, folks.
Well, no, everybody knew that whenever we left, it was going to look like shit, which is why your coward of a father never followed through, because he didn't want the bad press of just the general reality of the extraction. There was no version of reality where leaving didn't look like this.
Who's been watching? So this is a real red line, and
my mic is peaking, or his mic is peaking. He might be a little loud. I might be a little loud. Let's see. I'll bring that down a little bit. Hopefully.
Man is now in charge, right? Like Captain Phillips, I'm the captain now. That's what Joe Biden is hearing from the Taliban. And
is it?
Everyone in the world.
Yeah, except in this situation, in the Captain Phillips, that was actually Captain Phillips's fucking boat, and the people took it. In this situation, he's yelling. I gotcha. In this situation, Captain Phillips would have boarded the other guy's boat, stayed there for 20 years, and then when a helicopter came to get him, said, okay, here's your boat back.
Knows it. We probably are just now going to follow the orders of the Taliban because that's all Joe is probably capable of at this point.
Oh yeah, is that what is that the way you talk about the American president and our military and our soldiers on the ground? The patriotism, I'm just overwhelmed by it. I'm surprised a flag doesn't drop amazingly, like just foof behind him, and we all don't spontaneously start the Pledge of Allegiance. This is incredible.
He ceded control. He ceded American dominance to the freaking Taliban, guys.
American dominance? He ceded American dominance to the Taliban. Sorry, who's this guy? Sorry, who's this guy? Let's see, what does it say? Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State at the time, meeting with the Taliban's chief negotiator, Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar, in November. Psst, this is obviously fake news. It's August. So, thank you, Bean Toes. I intend to. It's getting there. It's getting, like, you can't really see it when I wear a dark shirt, but look at this. Look at this business, huh? It's coming down the shoulder. It's got, yeah. It's past my clavicles, and that's the goal. This is the shortest part where I had it, tight on the sides before it started growing, and that's just now starting to catch up. It's good. But anyway, so sorry. Yeah, we now know from Glenn Beck that it is it only an idiot would negotiate with the Taliban, and according to Don Jr., this whole thing was set in motion by Joe Biden last November.
Watching it. I think the Biden administration is staffed by a...
Look at this. Read that shit. Look at him reading this shit. You think the Biden administration is staffed by what? What? Who wrote this down on a little piece of paper for you, you dipshit?
Of idiots.
Really? That's it? You had to write down staffed by a bunch of idiots on a piece of paper and read it? You couldn't riff on staffed by a bunch of idiots. That's good stuff. I need to put that down on paper. Dad, I had a great idea. In my video, I'm going to say, I'm going to go guys a bunch of times, and then I'm going to say staffed by a bunch of idiots. Good job, son. Fucking hell. You had to write that down. All right.
They're literally saying, Billiken's saying, leaving Americans to get to the Kabul airport on their own is the best way to do this. Really? They got to run the gauntlet of the terrorist regime? Really?
Apparently there isn't a gauntlet. Apparently there are checkpoints and people are getting through. As a matter of fact, people are hanging out in front of the gates like they were absolutely jamming to get out. And this was because of the Afghans that wanted to get the fuck out of their own country. But let's see. Let's just look at Kabul Airport. Granted, let's see. Here you go. 2 hours ago. Evacuation flights out of Kabul are picking up. Here's what it's like at the airport. Quit. Get out of there, the crazy ad. The Biden administration's evacuation efforts in Afghanistan have gained considerable momentum in recent days, now far exceeding the initial daily goals. Far exceeding the initial daily goals after a chaotic and disjointed start. You mean when the Afghans themselves, who weren't the interpreters, weren't us, weren't just people leaving their own fucking country, refugees fleeing their own country, going to the civilian side of the airport, jammed up the fucking works. No surprise. The White House said Tuesday that morning that at least 12,700 people have been evacuated by 37 U.S. military flights, and 8,900 have been evacuated by coalition flights over the past 24 hours. The Pentagon added that there are a little bit above 5,000 people at the airport in Kabul waiting to board flights, which are now leaving every 45 fucking minutes. Additionally, two defense officials told CNN on Tuesday that the first U.S. troops have started leaving the country as the evacuation effort enters its final week. Soldiers are already leaving. I personally thought they weren't going to be getting people out, soldiers out, until this weekend. But apparently, they're so far ahead of schedule getting our people out and getting the other Afghans that we support out that they're actually starting to extract some of the non-crucial personnel. That's an improvement on all fronts. But the U.S. is still up against the clock. President Joe Biden will stick for now with the August 31st deadline to withdraw troops, according to a senior administration official. We arrived let's see. What matters? You got into Afghanistan on Sunday. What was your impression when you first got on the ground? We arrived mid-afternoon on a Qatari flight and was pleased and relieved to see quite large, well-ordered queues of people already being loaded onto aircraft from around the world. So the kind of awful scenes that Clarissa Ward had witnessed on her way out in the very early stages of the evacuation were not being repeated by the time I got in. But there were very large numbers, and there were also, of course, very large numbers of people pressed up against the wall outside, and indeed on that day, although we didn't know it at the time exactly, but on that day, 7 people were killed in crushes against the walls, a lot of them close to the British military camp, where they are actually in charge of the security of their area. Yeah, so there is a constant circulation of aircraft, mostly big cargo lift C-17s, and these propeller planes are kind of NATO aircraft. There's a small number of civilian aircraft. I'm seeing Cam Air, which is an Afghan airline that took several hundred people off. I watched that take off this afternoon. So there most certainly has been very significant increase that's borne out by the statistics, which show, according to the United States, that 21,000 were evacuated over a 24-hour period. That's both U.S. and coalition evacuees. Americans evacuated about 12,000 of them. Today, by lunchtime, the Americans had evacuated about 9,000 people. The numbers of people waiting to be evacuated seem to be sitting between 4,000 and 5,000. As small numbers of people were now able to get in, but everything is much, much more slickly organized, and there's no great surprise. People should get better at what they do, and nobody's had any practice. And nobody's had any practice at this kind of operation, so that it was chaotic to begin with, and now is pretty slick. Is no great surprise. Yes, it is. You're taking it for granted that in a situation like this, we could get to the point where it's pretty slick. Pretty slick. That's the descriptor. From the same networks that saying like, oh my God, pearl clutching. Guys.
UK, France, Britain sending in teams to help extract their people, but we can't be bothered until the clock runs out because the Taliban's in charge, or, we just run out of resources.
Is that why? Or is it because we have an agreement that if we don't go through with rifles and pick people up, we can just drive in and get them, or they can come out their own, then there's a ceasefire. But if we break the ceasefire we brokered, it endangers the people who are trying to get out and makes the mission harder. But again, this is this macho Delta Force bullshit. We're supposed to roll in there with trucks and fucking Chuck Norris this shit.
We have the resources. What we don't have is we don't have the balls and we don't have the will. And that's...
Sorry, you're talking about your dad again, who, nothing changed this year to last year or the year before or the year before. So, balls and will, I beg your pardon?
Joe Biden doesn't, and his pathetic administration doesn't. Keep watching, folks.
Keep watching, folks. The world's going to end, and guys, that's it. That's all you got. That Biden doesn't have any balls or will, because he's the guy who, after 20 years, is getting us out. 20 years. 10 years ago, he was against the surge and saying, we gotta go. And nobody listened. And Robert Gates is like, Biden's been wrong about every major, foreign policy decision over the last 40 years. Well, apparently, judging from where we are with this military in Afghanistan and this government in Afghanistan, that he was right about shoring it up for no fucking reason for 10 years because it was just going to go back to where it was. We could have spent the last 10 years using humanitarian aid, international pressure, and drone strikes on Taliban groups in the South, and done more for extracting Afghan women and girls during that time. But no, we didn't have balls or will.